directives to the government to table documents that ascertain that the revocation of the multi-billion shilling deals involving the Indian conglomerate were actually ceded to by the government. We'll also look at the eyes on 2027 with the Akamba community rejoining the Gema outfit. What does this mean for President William Ruto come 2027 and his potential contender, that is Wiper Party Kalonzo Musyoka leader? So we'll be looking at some of these issues as well as other stories making headlines. But first things first, let's have a look at some news updates. Public health services are expected to be disrupted starting today after the Kenya Medical Practitioners, Pharmacists and Dentists Union, KMPDU, directed over 4,000 medical interns to withdraw their services. This comes amid the government's failure to pay interns for 4 months, a situation that has already led to the suicide of 2 doctors. Bentuda Kwamboka with that report.
The Kenya Medical Practitioners and Dentists Union, KMPDU, has instructed over 4,000 medical intern doctors to withdraw their services from all public health facilities effective today. This directive follows the tragic death of a doctor by suicide, a move that is set to disrupt healthcare delivery across the country.
Kenyans are being put in a plane where the pilot, who is the doctor, is suicidal. But the airline tells you that they have insured the plane, they have fueled it, and you, the patient, should trust yourself to fly with this sick pilot. For once, let us ask ourselves who will care for the carers.
We are not seeing anything positive coming from that negotiations, because from the start of those talks, the judge noted that the circular that was issued by SRC is in dispute with an existing collective bargaining agreement. We are supposed to go and talk on how government will implement the CBA, which they have not done. As a union, we have tried to be patient and to negotiate with goodwill. But our patience has been mistaken for weakness. We are asking all the medical doctor interns across the country, in all the facilities, to stay at home immediately. That we will not afford to see any more deaths out of desperation, despair, and disillusionment that are caused by hard-working conditions. Government is solely to blame for the untimely demise of our 2 young colleagues. And government will equally take blames for the innocent Kenyans that will lose their lives during our total shutdown that is coming in the month of December.
The move was prompted by the death of a 29-year-old doctor at the Thika Level 5 hospital who reportedly took his own life after enduring frustrations at work. This follows 5 previous suicide attempts by other medical interns.
Those interns come join us.
Yeah.
According to KMPDU Secretary General Davji Atela, medical interns have gone for 4 months without pay, despite a return-to-work agreement signed after a 56-day strike ended in May. The union accuses the government of failing to honor its commitments, leaving interns in financial crisis.
We demand that these intern doctors that are currently working, that have labored for the last 4 months, be paid their salaries immediately, as per the CBA agreement that we signed 7 years ago. Payment that has been done seamlessly for 7 years is now causing death, mayhem, and suffering of doctors who are expected to offer services in the hospitals. How is universal health care deliverable when the government is out to kill the same persons who ought to offer these services in the hospitals by ensuring that they're not paid, they're not supported, they're not motivated?
The union has expressed frustrations over stalled negotiations and a Salaries and Remuneration Commission circular that was nullified by the High Court and has warned of a potential strike notice by the end of the month.
We are not seeing anything positive coming from that negotiations, because from the start of those talks, the judge noted that the circular that was issued by SRC is in dispute with an existing collective bargaining agreement. We are supposed to go and talk on how government will implement the CBA, which they have not done. As a union, we have tried to be patient and to negotiate with goodwill. But our patience has been mistaken for weakness.
This development comes 2 months after another 27-year-old medical intern at Gatundu Level 5 Hospital in Kiambu County was found dead in her apartment. She had reportedly faced financial struggles and toxic working environment.
Thank you so much.
For K24 TV, I'm Bentura Kwamboka.
The High Court in Milimani has ordered the state to produce evidence that indeed cancelled their Adani JKA deal. Judge Bahati Momuye has at the same time suspended the government from entering into any deal with the Indian company Adani Holdings, with the case set to proceed to a full hearing. As Martin Opio reports, Wiper leader Kalonzo Musyoka is demanding that those responsible for the project take full liability. Martin Opio, that report.
After President William Ruto announced the cancellation of Adani deals that included proposed lease of Jomo Kenyatta International Airport, several groups were back in court for the case challenging JKIA lease.
The afternoon heard from counsel on various matters.
Judge Bahati Momuye tied all the loose knots that could see the government by any chance return to Adani agreements. Momuye suspended the government from entering into any agreement or signing any contract with the Adani Group.
Pending the hearing and determination of the petitioner applicant's notice of motion application dated 12th October 2024, a conservatory order be and is hereby issued, restraining the respondents, jointly and severally, from entering into, approving, or furthering any concession agreement relating to the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport with the first and second respondents or their associated or related entities or any other party or entity.
The Adani Holdings has also been prohibited from taking control of Jomo Kenyatta International Airport, JKIA, and its assets.
Pending the hearing and determination of the application, a conservatory order be and is hereby issued, restraining the 11th and 12th respondents from taking over and operating the assets and business of the 7th respondent relating to Jomo Kenyatta International Airport.
In further back-to-back orders, the government will also be required to submit proof of evidence to the High Court confirming the cancellation of the relevant contracts by the 25th of January next year.
The respondents shall, in their responses to the application and the amended petition, adduce evidence on the question of any alleged cancellation or rejection of the impugned concession agreements and head of terms.
The government, through its lawyers, had previously stated that there was no contract to be annulled, while the Adani Group sought to have the court remove them from the case filed against them. Wiper leader and senior counsel Kalonzo Musyoka, Kibe Mungai and Dan Manzo, and Eugene Wamalwa as well, who are the petitioners, argued that there must be accountability on those who initiated the Adani deal project before the matter can be wished away.
The position of the petitioners would be that we shall have to proceed for a declaration that those dealings with Adani were fraudulent and unlawful ab initio, in which event no compensation is payable.
Everybody had Kenya brought on focus that this whole matter had to do with high-level corruption. And we are saying, as you had Council Kibe argue, we don't want people to cancel things and then leave Kenyans with huge burdens, paying compensation where it was not necessary. So we want this matter gone into in greater detail to even get to know who was paid what.
The judge has directed that the case be heard on January 25th next year. As the case is set to proceed to conclusion, petitioners emphasize that they were also challenging the constitutionality of the various provisions in the PPP Act that the Adani JKIA deal was founded on.
The Jomo Kenyatta International Airport, our pride and joy, the project was valued at over 268 billion shillings. We have no doubt, certainly as petitioners in this matter, that over 2.6 billion shillings has already been paid to Kenyan officials, because that is how Adani operates. The second issue, which is most worrisome, and Kenyans need to understand, American investors were cheated by Adani by taking the project that he had signed with the Indian government corruptly to get money from investors in the US, over $3 billion.
It's not enough to drop two deals, JKIA and K24. We know that Adani is in Shah. In fact, the proper name for that should be Adani Shah. that too must be dropped because it is equally tainted by fraud, by corruption, and it should face the same fate as this.
Following the cancellation of the two Adani deals, the government has remained adamant that no taxpayers' monies will be lost after the termination of the contracts following public uproar and what President William Ruto termed as new information availed to him. Martin Upio, K24 TV, Nairobi.
Elsewhere, the Auditor General, Nancy Gathungu, has revealed irregularities in how the government handles debt repayments. Despite billions of shillings being approved by the Controller of Budget, the National Treasury often pays less than requested and sometimes even more than approved. In one case, an excess of 77 billion shillings was paid in the 2022-2023 fiscal year. Joel Chacha reports on the findings from the Special Audit on External Debt Servicing.
A special audit report by the Auditor General has shed light on inconsistencies in how Kenya services its external loans, with underpayments and overpayments running into billions of shillings.
2021-2022, again, the amounts approved by the COB was 339.046 billion. The actual amount paid by CBK was 255.741 billion, giving a variance of 83.305 billion. In 2022-2023 again, the amount approved by COB was 311.722 billion, while the actual amount paid by CBK was 388.807 billion.
For instance, in the 2022-2023 fiscal year, the government overpaid 77 billion Kenya shillings, an amount that is more than 3/4 of what Kenya was seeking in the controversial Adani K24 deal,
which also presented a challenge.
The report also exposes weaknesses in oversight, with the Attorney General only providing legal opinions for 5 out of 32 loan projects. This gap has forced the government to rely on private law firms, potentially costing the country billions.
We were not able to get documentation on the legal opinions, and we again request that the implementing agencies and the National Treasury, if they can adhere to Section 9 of the Public Audit Act 2015, that requires public officers to provide information to the auditors.
Further, the audit flagged the lack of public participation in loan procurement, with only 10 out of 32 projects involving Kenyans in the process.
On the issue of public participation, are we assuming that all these loans were contracted after the new constitution, or were there some that were contracted before that?
15 of the 32 project loans sampled are dated between 1995 and 2010. So I think that explains yes.
Then we can excuse that was not a requirement at that time. But going forward, maybe as this committee may recommend, it should be something that should be taken care of.
Now the Debt and Privatization Committee of the National Assembly warns that these loopholes could lead to billions of shillings being lost annually in debt repayments.
For purposes of record and ease of following, at the time of approval, what was the exchange rate? At the time of payment, what was the exchange rate? Then we be able to follow through and see for sure the reason as to why there is this variance. It is because there was some fluctuations that is explained.
Some figures here are beyond that fluctuation of exchange rate. Others are less, others are more. And yet, when the shilling falls, I think this audit report was done when the shilling was still going up. But in situation now where the dollar exchange rate comes down, the loan must also equally come down significantly.
The control budget approves a payment. Then the payment could come 2 or 3 days later. Between those 2 days, there could be some procreation because this payment is denominated in foreign currency. It's either dollar or a yen or what. So what the members are asking, you as auditors, were you convinced that that lapse of time was justifying these differences?
Joel Chacha, K24 TV, Nairobi.
Bankers have painted a grim picture of Kenya's economy, even as the Government assures Kenyans of a growing economy majorly attributed to the drop of the country's inflation, which now sits at 2.7%. Kenya Bankers Association, while making their submissions to the National Assembly Finance and Planning Committee during the public participation on Tax Laws Amendment Bills 2024, said that the economy is shrinking, and if most of the amendments sail through, the small and medium-sized business are likely to feel the brunt. And as our reporter Linda Koskei tells us, the committee questioned the effect of the proposal, saying that KBA is more concerned about lending to the government and not small businesses.
Despite firm assurance by the government that Kenya's economy has continued to show considerable resilience, industry players in the banking sector seem to disagree.
We are at a stage where the economy has stagnated and actually it's shrinking.
Kenya Bankers Association KBA, while appearing before the National Assembly Finance and Planning Committee to make their submission on the Tax Laws Amendment Bill 2024, faulted the government for proposing various tax increments in various sectors of the economy.
If you look at the numbers from the central bank on manufacturing, construction, transport, those numbers are going down.
Under the Tax Laws Amendment Bill, the government is seeking to raise the minimum core capital requirement for banks from 1 billion shillings to 10 billion shillings, a matter that KBS says will have a devastating effect not only to banks but to small businesses who depend on loans from banks to run their businesses.
We are going to be able to support the micro and small businesses to the tune of 150 billion. Now, when we put this law in place, that changes the dynamics around.
Some players are shaken. They feel like they might go off the market.
In October this year, KBA pledged to inject approximately 150 billion shillings annually to boost SME activity across the country. This might not happen, according to the bankers, since their focus will shift to attaining the 10 billion threshold set if the parliament passes the amendment as is.
Banks will reduce the lending to be able to focus on building up their capital buffers so that they can be able to meet this threshold.
That did not convince the committee, who say that the move is meant to build stronger banks and increase their muscle to finance big projects.
You made a commitment to increase loans for small and medium enterprises. How much have you increased?
The conversation opened the stage for a heated conversation.
You guys, you have forgotten your core business. Completely you have forgotten your core business. What you are doing is collect money, collect our deposits. You don't give us money, loans. You go and buy treasury bonds.
How else can we make banks to work for Kenyans and not the other way around?
The original intention of registering banks is to support the government by supporting the economy.
Finance and National Planning Committee National Assembly Chair Kimani Kuria insisted that the proposal should propel banks to tap into alternative resource mobilization strategies.
Because banking is such a profitable business, raising money, whether it's through venture capital or doing an LPO, we haven't had an LPO in Kenya for a very long time. So there are very many avenues that are there in raising capital.
Meanwhile, the bill offered 100% tax exemption on interest income for bonds and securities used to raise funds for green building projects. With this, KBS said, should stay as is, which made the committee question their stand.
Green bonds. This is where we are targeting, and this is where the tax should come from. But they want to protect it.
Tourism sector as a catalyst for economic growth also took center stage at the public participation, with different presenters calling for incentives for the sector.
While our neighbors are actually giving more and more incentives.
The hearings are part of the wider public consultation, and Kenyans will continue to voice their opinions again tomorrow as they seek to understand the Tax Amendment Laws 2024. Linda Koskei, K24 TV.
Now, the Religious Organization Bill of 2024, which sparked backlash from religious groups nationwide, has officially been withdrawn. The move comes in response to intense backlash from religious leaders who had criticized the bill and rejected political donations, sparking speculation that the government is seeking to mend fences with the church. And as Harriet Chimere reports, an alliance of 36 religious organizations have announced the formation of a task force to establish self-regulation guidelines.
Barely a month of constant backlash and criticism from religious leaders over government policies, the state of the nation and even church donations, the state has seemingly sought to mend the fences with the withdrawal of the contentious Religious Bill 2024. The bill was the brainchild of Tana River Senator Danson Mungatana.
This morning, written a letter to the Speaker of the Senate, the Honorable Amason Jeffa Kingi, to seek a formal withdrawal of the Religious Organizations Bill, Senate Bills number 44 of 2024. This follows wide consultations with various religious organizations, starting from here at the national level in Nairobi, to the regional level in the coast, to my county level in Tana River County.
After the legislator's announcement, a coalition of 26 religious organizations declared the formation of a new task force. The clergy says the task force mandate includes self-regulation among religious institutions to prevent incidents such as the Shakahola massacre and to root out rogue officials.
Na tunashukuru pia rais mwenyewe alitamka na kinywa chake akasema kanisa lenyewe lipange vile litajisimamia. Tumetengeza task force ya kanisa. Tutaanza kupanga vile tunaweza fanya self-regulation. Tunakubaliana kunaweza kuwa na excesses chache, lakini wahubiri walio waaminifu ndio wengi. Kuna excesses chache, tutaunda bill ambao tutawasilisha kwa bunge iliyo nzuri.
The now withdrawn bill had proposed several controversial measures, including requiring religious organizations to pay taxes on income and gifts. Under the bill, churches were to file returns and present audited accounts. It also outlined stiff penalties for non-compliance, with fines of up to 5 million shillings or imprisonment for up to 3 years. Additionally, the bill called for the creation of a uniform theological training curriculum for clergy. The bill also sought to criminalize any attempt to recruit or convert a child from one religion to another without the consent of their parent or guardian. Eligibility for registration of churches was also to be supported by 25 people professing the same faith. The bill also mandated the creation of separate bank accounts for offerings and tithes, with those for income generated from other economic activities like selling merchandise, failure to which a 1 million shillings fine or a 2-year sentence would be incurred. On the matter of ongoing court cases linked to the Mungatana bill, the religious leaders say they are now pursuing alternative dispute resolutions.
And part of religious organization went to the civil courts. Others went to the constitutional court to say that they don't agree and procedural issues and so on. So that is still pending in court. What the bishops have said is that they have taken that matter from the normal courts. They have taken them to ADR. ADR is Alternative Dispute Resolution. So this has nothing to do with the criminal court cases that are proceeding against Mackenzie and the others.
So we have to differentiate. Are you in a comedian church or are you in a priest church? So when you enter into comedian, they can do anything. But when you enter to the pastor will lead you to the God's word. So I think this is going to be dealt with, and we are telling Honorable Mukatana that we need also to separate the cult and the church. There's a lot of difference between the cult and the church. We are the church.
The Tana River Senator was the chair of the ad hoc committee that was last year mandated to investigate the proliferation of religious organizations and the circumstances leading to the deaths of 110 people in Shakahola, Kilifi County. The question now remains, will the withdrawal of this bill ease the tension between the church and the government? Harriet Chimere, K24 TV, Nairobi County.
The Evangelical Alliance of Kenya, EAK, has called for a national convention to address pressing issues affecting the country through consensus-driven solutions to restore healthcare services, reform the education system, and provide genuine economic relief for Kenyans. The alliance also put the government on the spot for breaking promises it makes without communicating reasons. David Kagina with more.
After the statement by the Kenya Conference of Catholic Bishops that sparked mixed reactions across government agencies, the Evangelical Alliance of Kenya has joined the critique, saying the government's performance fails short on many fronts.
When you build a nation on trust, a nation on truthfulness, on honesty, then things move, as opposed to when we have promises that are not fulfilled.
The evangelical churches are of the opinion that the government has done little to ease the economic strain on taxpayers while increasing taxation and debt.
We plead for the sincere conversation as a country on what can be done to address the economic pain the people are feeling. Even though inflation has gone down, bringing down prices of certain commodities like fuel, sugar, and edible oils, this has not brought significant impact on the cost of living of families.
Highlighting the turmoil in CBC, especially in junior secondary schools, and the flawed university funding model, the Alliance warned of regression if urgent reforms are not implemented.
The government must consider that without a working education ecosystem from primary to the university level is one way of retrogression.
The clerics also raised critical questions about human rights violations, saying all is not well. They also say the country is polarized, courtesy of the political class.
If government does not uphold the constitution and the laws of the land, we will be inviting anarchy and disintegration of law and order in the country.
We can tell that the country is neither united nor cohesive. We are sharply divided along ethnic, economic, generational, religious, and even along gender lines.
To address these issues, the EAK proposed the National Convention that will bring together stakeholders and citizens to discuss and develop solutions. The alliance also criticized the government's failure to constitute the IEBC 2 years after its dissolution. However, they did acknowledge some positive developments, including recent reduction in fuel and food prices. David Kagina, K24, Nairobi.
Well, that's it for some news updates. News Dawn takes a short break at this point. When you get back, we get back with some newspaper review as we get into the discussion. Stick around.
The biggest reggae and rhythm show ever on Kenyan television.